need a mentor in life? Yes, we do. We might find them in our family or our friend circle, but we might be scared that they might judge us. So we won't be comfortable telling things to them. But sometime of the other in your life, you will find a mentor. It might be a teacher, your professor, or a counselor themselves. I found mine too. I would love to welcome Mrs. Kalyani Kirti Giridhara. Welcome, ma'am.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, ma'am. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Before I start the conversation with her, I would love to give a small introduction about her. She was born and brought up in Bangalore, Karnataka. She did her schooling from UAS campus and Stella Maris High School. She has done BCom, LLB, MA Psychology, PGDMH, Diploma in Counseling Skills, Certified Life Skill Trainer, Play Therapist for the Blind, certified by Headley School for Blind in Yorks, USA, and certified gatekeeper for suicide prevention, forensic psychology, and offender profiling. From heading the legal cell of NBFC to a lecturer in an engineering college, she has more than 10 years of experience in volunteering and counseling at various counseling centers, women's helpline, and hospitals in Bangalore. She is serving at Arpita Foundation as administrative trustee, counseling psychologist, monitor, coordinator for counseling, conducting seminars and workshops. She also coordinates the day-to-day functions of the foundation with the managing trustee. It is wonderful to have you here, ma'am. Thank you so much for being here with us. Uh,
Thank you.
Before we start off with the questions, is there anything that you can share with us?
I'm actually so excited and I'm actually wondering what all you're going to ask me and how I can connect with all these answers and keep you entertained as well as informed. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Let us start off with our questions, ma'am. Ma'am, what was your passion, ma'am? What did you really want to do?
Actually, I wanted to become an actress, I was so fascinated by the stage, the lights, the mic, the sound, the makeup, everything of that, and the dialogue delivery. And what fascinated most was the people clapping hands after my performance. This fascinated me like anything. I just wanted to be an actress.
Ma'am, but how come you didn't pursue your profession in that?
See, actually, what happened was after my collegiate education, I felt very ill. I inherited all the many of the family, uh, diseases that were transmitted through every generation. So I very loyally and gracefully, took forward this illness, and it made me very immobile. So because of that, my passions, my interests had to be shelved for some time.
Okay, ma'am, if you don't mind, you told that you had a lot of health issues. Would you mind elaborating it? Because even though you have so much of health issues, you're doing wonders all around. So, would you like to tell us, please?
So I have a lot of health issues. First of all, it started with tumor, and I am a survivor. I have been a fighter throughout, from head to toe. Either I fall down and bring. I am very accident prone person. So either I go in search of illness, or illness is gifted to me, something of that sort. But from head to toe, I have something or the other happening all the time. A very happening person, and I have been a very regular visitor to the operation theater. So, um, right from either I fall down, break my nose, and go to the operation theater, or I had a thyroid that was turning toxic, so I had to remove the organ. So I had something or the other. But I'm always a fighter, and I keep up that positive attitude and keep up the life's challenges going. Come on, test me is my.
Yeah, that is really inspiring, ma'am. If any one of us were there in your place, it would have been really difficult for us to even move from one place to another. So
But
it's
actually, that is also true in a fact, because rheumatoid arthritis is one thing that that has affected all my joints.
hmm.
So I have certain deformities. I am inspired. I have deformities which has not kept me mobile. I need to have somebody or the other sometimes traveling along with me, so that I don't fall down and break another part of my body. Some or the other.
That's really sportive of you, ma'am. Ma'am, but when we look at your academic profile, it says that you have done LLB. Then how come you're not pursuing that as your profession, ma'am?
Now, whether I did my BCom and LLB was not my personal choice. Okay. So at that time when I finished my second PU, my dad told me, that because when you look at his academic thing, he was a physics graduate and he went into auditing, and he was the, senior audit officer in AG's office. So that is how what happened was, he thought, if I do something in commerce, I may follow his footsteps. Okay. So that was one of the reasons why he asked me to do commerce, and so I did it. Suppose he had told science also, I would have done it, and probably I would have been in a different field by now. I don't know what fate had in store for me. But I did that, and when I was very ill, my grandfather used to come and sit with me in the hospital to give me company and be an attender there. And when he was sitting with me, he would read all the spiritual books, and he would read from the magazines, headlines from the newspaper, all that. And he was telling, there was one person in the family that is a lady advocate missing. We have engineers, we have doctors and all that, but we do not have an advocate. So immediately, I said, don't worry, Tata, I'll do the law for you. And immediately I joined Seshadripuram College, and I did my law also. uh, that is how I came into the field of law.
Okay. Ma'am, when we generally come across you, people think that you're a very bossy person, you might be rude and all of those things. But when we get to know you, you're a very kind-hearted person and a person with a lot of sense of humor. So what do you have to say for that, ma'am?
See, that is because of my little bit I would attribute to my profession after my law. I joined one non-banking financial corporation. In fact, I was gradually from the desk interacting with clients, I slowly grew up to occupying the seat of the manager, recoveries. So I was handling the recovery department, with especially filing the cases and all that. So while you're talking to the clients, many of these clients, what happens is some of them don't become defaulters intentionally, but some of them become defaulters intentionally, and they are not all that very cordial when they are speaking to you. Okay, so this attitude of being like a boss, comes there. That authoritative attitude comes there. So your body language changes, your the tone in which you talk to them changes, all that happens. So when you're interacting with me for the first time, or when you're talking to me for the first time, you may think that, oh my god, this person, I don't know whether she's approachable. But gradually, when you start talking to me, we can talk anything under the sun with lot of humor in it.
Very true, ma'am. Very true. Ma'am, how did your counseling journey start, ma'am? Because what you have now, like what you have done before and what you're doing now, are completely different.
Mm, correct. So when I was there in the recovery department, and when there was not this, as much as challenging the job was, it was also very threatening. There would be a lot of people who are not very friendly when they speak to you, and they are not very sorry that they have become defaulters and all that. So at that time, what happened is, the more it became threatening rather than thrilling. I had to take a call because I had a very small kid at home. So this job itself was stressing out at some point. So I decided priority was the family was first. So I decided that, let's say quits, and I quit the job and I joined Atria Institute of Technology, which is very, very close by to my place. And I joined there as a lecturer. So initially I had to talk to these children, and when I was talking to these children, first thing for me was, how do I address this? Because I've never been a lecturer before. And when I get into a classroom of all big grown up children with beard and mush and all that, it was like, I was out of place because I knew only to handle defaulters. I did not know how to handle students. For me, I was seeing both students and defaulters with the same lens. So it became a very tough thing for me because there was very thin line of demarcation that I drew personally. So then slowly, when I started talking to them, I realized they were going through a lot of issues, and there was a lot of indiscipline also sometimes. And there were people who were going through some emotional lows, and they were succumbing to peer pressure and all that. So what I would do is I would call them separately after the class, even though it was not my job to do so. I would call them, talk to them, understand why they are doing whatever they are doing, and try to counsel and bring them back to track. So I'm very proud. Some of my students are, unexpectedly they are doing so fine, and they are settled abroad and they are doing amazingly well. So they are still in touch with me in spite of me leaving that job also. So this is one thing that gave me an exposure to all these different kinds of students also. And eventually, because of that, I was made the head of the anti-ragging committee of the college. I was a member of that, and once I became the anti-ragging thing also, there were even more number of children who came and started talking to me about so many issues that was happening and all that, and that gave me the thing to counsel few more students. Where drastic step would have been taken, I made sure that they come back to track. So this is one thing I started doing. So when I started recognizing that I have this built-in capability to counsel people, try to understand and empathize with them, I decided, let me streamline my, these existing skills. And then from then on, I took off. I did my diploma in counseling skills, and then on, I started doing a lot of counseling.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, where and all have you traveled for your counseling sessions, ma'am?
So, see, when I did my diploma in counseling skills, we were asked to go to different areas where we thought that counseling was, required, and we felt the need for counseling. So that made me go to schools, colleges, corporates, and this palliative care unit of the cancer patients who are there in Kidwai. And I also went to Nimhans Hospital, and we were there in Nimhans Hospital also looking at all these people. We went to Ramaya Hospital where there were trauma cases after accidents and all that. And we went to juvenile homes where children who have been criminal offenders. So we have gone and visited them also. Then what fascinated me was the short stay home of the Women's Helpline at Sanjay Nagar. So I've gone there also with our team would visit them also. And so that has taken, so you name the place, I have gone there.
Yeah. Ma'am, this reminds me of a short movie what you have done. It is about organ donation. So what led you to do that movie, ma'am?
See, organ donation is because I told you initially, I myself have, I am a very accident prone person. And I have received an organ from, because as much as when people look at me and they talk about, ma'am, you have a very beautiful, expressive eyes, I laugh at it because only one belongs to me. The other one, the other organ has been, retina has been given to me by some kind-hearted soul who donated this and left this by after he left this planet. His soul left this planet. So I had one deep sense of, this kind of to save people after death, to all that. So, but I have only few more organs left here. My thyroid is not there, and few more organs are not there. So what would happen is when I go for scanning and all that, they would say something wrong with the machine, ma'am. Just hold on, we'll try to do some more here, there. But those organs are not there. So no. So then I felt, yes, if at all there was a need for, if I could do some donation and save another life from this planet, then one of the purpose of me coming to this planet is served.
Really, ma'am, I'm really speechless because I don't know what to tell after all these things you've gone through. You're such a sportive person and inspiration to all of us. Really, ma'am, hats off to you. Ma'am,
Thank you.
we know that you're a part of Arpita Foundation. It is a very rare field, and most of the people don't even know about it. Ma'am, how did you get into that field, ma'am?
See, Arpita Foundation has got a lot of objectives. One of their main objective was suicide prevention. Now, all of us go through a lot of stress at one point or the other in time. What is very important is how much you are able to convey to the world that, or to somebody that it is a cry. I mean, your stress has to be shared with somebody or the other, so that somebody at some point of time will be able to understand you, listen to you, and help you out to motivate you to come back to your normal routine life. So in this process, when one of my friend told me about he is starting an organization called Arpita Foundation to cater to the needs of these people, uh, I didn't turn back at all. I said, yes, I'm going to be a part of it. And I started giving my heart and soul. And today I am been holding the realm of the organization in the capacity of administrative trustee.
Ma'am, can you please elaborate and tell us how does this exactly work, ma'am, this foundation?
So for that, you have to first understand what is the suicide, what is counseling, all that. I'll give you a little brief about all that. Okay. Now, when all of us know that uh, there is a beginning for every beginning of life, there is an end to a life. Correct?
Yes.
All of us, and when all of us experience some or the other kind of emotions when we are in this life. Okay. And it could be sadness, it could be happiness, it could be angry, it could be curiosity, you name it. When you look at the Google, or when you look at some of these list of emotions that you experience during the lifetime, you will get hundreds of it. But ultimately, sometimes what will happen is when you are stressed, you are not displaying the correct emotion. You are withdrawing, and there are certain other symptoms that you display. But many a times, what will happen, you don't display the right emotion at the right time. Sometimes we feel it's I'm not okay today. How many of us say it's okay to be not okay on some day? Do anybody say it's okay? Today you're
No.
not okay, it's okay. Nobody will say, no, 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 you have to be okay all the time. How can that be possible? So it's one of the main things that we have to understand is it's okay not to be okay. And second thing is when a person dies, what happens? Somebody in your neighborhood dies. Immediately we'll ask, how old is that man? Or
Yeah.
how old is that woman?
Hmm.
Okay. Why do you think we ask that question? Why do you think you ask that question?
Because it might be because of the age factor or their health
Yeah.
or something like that.
So you want to make a judgment after that. You understand? So once you come to know age 80, 90, oh, okay, age it's okay kind of attitude, right?
Yeah.
The second thing is, was there a prolonged illness? Was that person suffering from some illness?
Yeah.
Then also somehow we can accept it, right? But
Yeah.
then after that, what happens is there is an accident happens and a person dies of accident. What happens at that time? If it's a person who's very much known to you, even if on a road accident, if that person has done a mistake and he has lost his life, you will obviously, suppose the lorry has come and hit.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, he hit a lorry and he died. Okay. Obviously, because it is your friend, what you will say, the lorry driver was reckless.
Yeah.
My
Yes.
friend is always correct. What if your friend had not worn a helmet? you know,
Yes. No.
all that, all that is not case. So, but somewhere, when a person dies, one kind of sympathy will be there, and you will start judging whether who is right, how did he die. So many questions keep cropping up. Now, you said illness, age factor, and all that. Again, when you go Google through the net to see the different reasons why a person dies, you will find again hundreds of reasons why a person can die.
Yes.
Okay, that's one. Okay, that is one of the reasons why he has to leave this world. He cannot permanently stay here, right? He
Yeah.
needs to have a reason to get out of this planet or leave this planet. Now, what catches our attention is when a person commits suicide.
Yes.
Okay, so when a person commits suicide, it is a lot of mystery that is surrounding. Why did he commit suicide? What happened? There is a lot of mystery that surrounds. So there is a double problem here. One is the mystery, the other one is the tragedy.
Yeah.
So the entire family is looked at as if they are all one kind of criminals, or they are seen as some kind of victims of a situation. Ayo Papa, suppose a man dies, they say no, he's got a young wife, a small child. What could have happened? So this mission is working constantly in your head also, right? So there are hundreds of factors why a person is pushed to commit suicide. Mainly because um, it is untreated depression. That is the one thing that we all have to accept and understand. Okay, and the second thing is the person has attempted to end his life several times before he has actually committed suicide.
Yeah.
Third thing is the fighting spirit, that I will not give up. Whatever happens, I will not. That fighting spirit is gone from him. So he is succumbing to the situation. And lastly, what we should understand is the person who is committed is pushed to believe that he is helpless, he is hopeless, he is alone. There's nobody to understand him. All these are all the factors that is there. Now there are certain startling facts about suicide that you should know. First thing is, India is the world's capital of suicide. Does that shock you?
Sorry, ma'am?
India is leading, not just in corona but also in suicide rates. The second thing what you should know is, uh, this one, it is the third leading cause of death in India. Okay, and the first reason is untreated depression. Okay, and the male members of our, so 79 or to 80% of the males are mostly the ones who commit suicide. Okay, and many a times it is because of pesticides, hanging, throwing themselves in front of moving vehicles, are all the reasons why they commit suicide. Now I believe there is a report conducted by leading psychological journals which say that because of corona, the stoppage of trains and all that, suicide by falling in front of trains is reduced. And also because of the non-availability of pesticides, so they are still committing suicide by hanging and all that. They are still doing all that. But what we should another thing we should be saying is, there is a starting point, there is an ending point. Starting point is where you start your goals. The ending point is where your success, what you consider as success. But the struggle is where your energy lies, your strength lies, your potential and all that. You should see how you are going to, your effort lies. So but the depth of that effort is not being told by anybody. Okay, how much effort, for what you should put, and the motivation, all that matters. So at that time, many of them succumb to suicide. Okay, and while they are going through that depression, they are very vulnerable to criticism. The moment you criticize about the smallest thing, they'll take that very personally. You just say, today the color of your shirt is little faded, or that also is a criticism. They take it very personally. They are so blinded by their own depression that they are not able to see any solutions for their problem. Okay, and they are again pushed to so much corner that you know they think that they are so helpless that they can't share their problem with anybody. Okay. And there is that thing is they are so detached that you will see that they are not even talking to anybody also, you know. So these are all the vulnerable people. And like I told you, the mental illness, substance abuse, previous suicide. And what is very important is that there is a lot of attempts that they would have already made previously, you know, either by, you know, cutting their wrist, trying to hang, seeing the weight of, you know, whether the fan blades will withstand their weight and all that. One thing is, they, instead of solving their problem, they want to end their problem as quickly as possible. What they do is, this is only, they don't see this as a temporary situation, which will also pass off. We always say, no, this too shall pass. That they are not ready to see. So what happens now? There are, as per our experience goes, there are the older generation people, the senior citizens, are the ones who are really vulnerable because they don't want to be burdened to their children. And next, when we are seeing the untreated, like I told you, psychological disorders. And then, you know, there are some health professionals also commit suicide because, in spite of putting so much of effort, you know, their patients are not getting better. So their own academic skills are questioned. And domestic violence, because of domestic violence, there are so much of pain that a person is, you know, experiencing. So all this definitely are the reasons for, these are all the, I mean, some lights that I can throw in such a short time about suicide and all that.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am,
So
would
there
you?
can be ah,
Yes, ma'am. Please continue.
no, there are interventions that, as family and friends and teachers or counselors and mentors at both workplace and families, no, we can find out through the signs that they are displaying, and definitely refer them to counseling, which will help them in a great way to overcome this kind of stress and the suicidal thoughts. But if, unfortunately, recently studies have shown that, you know, if there are people in their own family who have committed suicide, then, like how there are genetically transmitted diseases, like that, even suicide can be genetically transmitted, like depression.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, would you like to give any suggestions or anything to tell for the youngsters uh, who think that suicide is the only option?
No, what happens is, yeah, suicide is unfortunately not the option. Okay, but they can be, if kindly. My only thing will be, yes, all of us go through setbacks. You know, all of us go through setbacks. So you need to identify somebody who is like a mentor, a friend, or like you mentioned at the initial talk itself, you need somebody like a mentor, a friend in the or anybody who is non-judgmental, okay, who does not pass any judgment about you, but is there to listen to you, not just listen to you, understand your emotions. Because many a times, yes, I have also gone through stress, you have also gone through stress, all of us have more. There is nobody in the planet who can say that, no, I have never gone through stress, I don't even know what it is. Something or the other will stress them down at some point or the other. What I would suggest is, kindly talk to somebody. Find a person whom you think will hold on to your thing. You know, whatever the issues that you are sharing will be kept confidential, will not be shared with anybody, will not be made a mockery out of whatever you say, all that. So, and furthermore is, you as a friend can do all that. And finally, you can suggest them to counselors. You know, counselors can definitely help them in overcoming their challenges. We are not problem solvers, we definitely cannot solve the problem, we are not here to do that. But then what we can do is, we can help them identify, you know, at one point they are also blank without even knowing how to solve their problem. So here we are sitting along with them, giving them all the emotional support that they need, and further encouraging them to think about the options that are available, so that they can solve their problem. Okay. And the problem may not be solved at all at the end of the day, but you will know how to adapt yourself and transform and change your mind to think differently. Okay, so that is one thing that I can suggest like that.
Yes, ma'am. I'm sure people can take this option of contacting Arpita Foundation if they need any help.
Yeah, I would like to talk a little about our organization also.
Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
you can visit our website, arpitafoundation.org, and we have got a lot of objectives in our organization, which is actually mentioned in the website also. But this organization was started last year in the month of April. We started this organization. It was started by few friends, including Mr. Patrick Vass, who is our managing trustee. The moment he told me about this, for me it was no looking back. For me, I felt I'm truly connected to this organization's objectives and all that. And this was predominantly to help extend our helping hand to callers who are feeling very helpless and hopeless. Not every day you may get a suicidal call, but people who feel they are not um, emotionally strong to handle certain situations, definitely call us and they share their concerns with us. And one thing I would like to tell is we are associated with Vanderwala Foundation in Mumbai, and Live Love Love Foundation of Deepika Padukone also. We are associated with them, and any calls that comes to their organization is transferred to us, and we attend all the South Indian calls and pan India. Even we are getting these days calls from abroad also. And we are very thankful to MS Ramaya Memorial Hospital, who has given us space to function this helpline. So we are very closely associated with the psychiatric department of MS Ramaya Hospital also. And we are associated with Times of India's Teach India project, where we are teaching spoken English. Okay, spoken English to uh, people who are between 18 to 35 years, who are school dropouts or who don't know, spoken English.
Yeah.
And so that this spoken English will help them to get some jobs like Swiggy or Amazon or something like that, where they can get at least the basic delivery jobs also. Now we have all our volunteers are trained counselors. They're all gatekeepers of suicidal prevention, and they know to speak various languages like Kannada, Tamil, English, Hindi, Telugu, Malayalam, Gujarati, Konkani, Assamese, then some Bengali, Urdu, Marathi. So we have speakers. So we have got roosters spread over the week with different language speaking people. So that will help the callers to choose whichever language that they are comfortable speaking, they can speak. We all these calls are absolutely free of cost. Free of cost. We don't charge at all. So
Yes.
we also conduct the workshops at schools, colleges, corporates, and other institutions, where there and all we talk to people about the mental awareness and other life skills. Okay, you can visit our website, and you can call between 10 and 5 p.m. every day. Even we are working on Sundays. And nowadays we are also associated with the Bangalore Commissioner of Police Office, where any calls after 5 o'clock that are suicidal, we are attending their calls. We are in talks with them, so they are forwarding those calls to us.
Really, ma'am, you guys are doing such a noble job of saving lives. Thank you so much for that. And thank you so much for spending your valuable time with us, ma'am. It was wonderful having you and wonderful knowing your experience. And thank you so much for inspiring all of us. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Most
I would
welcome,
like
most
to,
welcome.
yes, ma'am. I would like to thank the viewers also. I hope you guys liked the video.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.